I am back, everyone. I went on a little mini vacation with the family celebrating my birthday. In fact, I turned the big 5-0 on Friday, so it's good to be back. But unfortunately, we got a lot to talk about in the weather department. We've got some big time supercell thunderstorms with multiple days of severe storms and flooding rains to highlight very high impact areas. It's all complements of this deepening trough that really digs down into the Baja California, and it's going to eject out into West Texas and into the Panhandle later on this afternoon and spread its moisture and precipitation into Oklahoma, Kansas, all the way up into Iowa. And that low pressure center with the warm front lifting well north, folks. We're talking Minnesota, Wisconsin, really all the way to Canadian border. Pretty intense upper level low because the moisture surge is drifting well north. I mean, look at that. Very rare to kind of see dew points in the upper 60s. This is late April, so we're getting into that time of year where you start to see that transition of some of that moisture surge lifting well north. And in fact, this code could go as far north as Duluth, Minnesota. I can't even roll out even Canada getting some severe weather with this low pressure center and the warm front lifting all the way to the Canadian border. In fact, another culprit is going to be all the low level shear. So out ahead of it, any storm that will be on the discrete nature would be supportive of tornadoes. In fact, even some strong tornadoes could unfold across the Midwest, the upper Midwest today, especially for those areas into Iowa, Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin, and then well north. Even the northern areas could get into the action with those supercell thunderstorms. So there's the low pressure center. I mean, look at that, how far north it is. It's literally heading all the way up into Canada, and that's the warm front. So this is the more concerning aspect of the supercell. But once these start forming off the dry line later on this afternoon in West Texas, those could turn severe very quickly. They'll be fighting a capping inversion on the initial onset, but any storm that's able to penetrate that boundary layer, the capping inversion, the little warm air aloft down below, they could turn supercellular very quickly in the heat of the afternoon towards the 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock time frame. In fact, this is the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. They still, in fact, have that moderate risk for those areas across Minnesota, Iowa, as well as into Wisconsin. The warm front lifts well north all the way even into the Duluth, Minnesota. But those thunderstorms could get going again into West Texas as the dry line starts to get active. There into West Texas, western Oklahoma, the Elk City region could get some of the initial onset of tornadic activity. Here is the upgraded tornado risk for this afternoon. We do have a 5% more of a low end threat towards West Texas, but once you hit towards Oklahoma, towards the Elk City region, they do have that elevated upgraded 10% risk for strong tornadoes this afternoon. And this lifts into Kansas, but really gets amplified as you head into Des Moines, back into La Crosse, getting into the Milwaukee region, but especially for those areas into Minneapolis and really all the way to Duluth. I mean, would not even be surprised if they pull this extended elevated risk even further north than what it is right now. Places like Marquette that saw snow not too long ago are going to get to the action with tornado threat even all the way even for as far north as them. But here's the radar depiction, kind of gives you an overall setup on the latest high resolution guidance that just came out about 30 minutes ago. Yeah, by the time we hit 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock time frame, that warm front is going to be well to the north into the Canadian border, and that's going to be causing that air to rise upward with this strong low-level jet off to its west, and that's when we could see some of those discrete supercell thunderstorms likely starting to originate, and all these could be some big-time hail producers and some tornadoes, if not some strong tornadoes. The atmosphere definitely is capable of producing strong EF2, EF3 type tornadoes later this afternoon into the early evening time frame. And this action should start to fill in once we pass the 5 o'clock time frame. There in western Oklahoma, West Texas, we start to have to see the dry line. And as these shift further eastbound into the overnight, they are going to be a little bit of a weakening trend, especially for those areas in Oklahoma and Texas. But look at the cap. I mean, look at the Cape values that's producing for this supercell thunderstorms all the way up to 5,000. That's a lot of energy in the atmosphere, especially there's those areas into West Texas, western Oklahoma. Yes, they are going to be fighting a little bit of a capping inversion, but man, the atmosphere is prime with tornado parameters literally pretty much maxed out later on this afternoon into the early evening time frame across western Oklahoma. And there is your tornado parameters highlighted across western Oklahoma. And of course, that bullseye where the moderate risk is in play into Iowa, Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin, and that lifts it even further north. So don't be surprised this extends even further north than what it is even currently right now as we get the afternoon update from the Storm Prediction Center. But as we head into tomorrow, that cold front will slide southeastbound. And as we head into that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock time frame, we have a new risk for severe storms highlighted to the north of that cool front across West Texas again, Oklahoma. Now it's transitioning into more of a Missouri, Arkansas to Kentucky to Indiana, and then lifting into Ohio, back into New York, getting all the way into Pennsylvania here. So those could also be on the strong to severe side and into the heat of the afternoon, but also the rain threat. So the rain threat to the north of the front will likely be just kind of a heavier rain threat on Tuesday. To the south of the front, that's where you'll start to see some of that severe storms as we head into the afternoon time frame. But man, there's going to be a lot of energy in the atmosphere and a lot of precipitable water value as well. So flooding is a huge concern with an upgraded moderate risk for those areas into Wichita Falls. We're talking the Oklahoma City region. Tulsa is into that area. This area could easily get 2, 4, possibly even some isolated 6-inch amounts within this red bullseye zone, if you will. The yellow area is likely 1 to 3 inches. You start getting in the green, you're talking likely, to about a 1-inch, amounts, isolated 1.5-inch amounts. But here's your upward rising motion air. So this kind of gives you an idea on the latest helicity tracks for the next 48 hours. You can see as the cold front kind of slides further southbound, that pulls the severe threat and the capability of tornadic activity further south. But for today, look at the train tracks that roll across Minnesota, back through Wisconsin, as well as into Iowa. This bleeds further south as we head into tomorrow through Missouri, back into Arkansas and Illinois. And then, of course, a mix of today and tomorrow getting into Oklahoma and West Texas, Wichita Falls region, Lubbock. Those areas will likely see possible tornadic activity in very large hail producers, and that extends into your Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe into Kentucky, West Virginia, getting into Pennsylvania, as well as into New York. So overall, the next 48 hours, it looks pretty intense, and especially for those areas where you start to see the deeper, darker reds and the purples, that is your highest activity of the strongest capability of stronger thunderstorms across those regions. The yellow areas are lighter amounts, and of course the green is more your lighter rain amounts across those areas. But as we head into Wednesday, everything kind of shifts further south. So now we're talking areas across the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We'll likely set up maybe even two rounds of thunderstorms, even a morning round coming out of Oklahoma and West Texas. After about, say, 10 o'clock time frame, you start to have to see some of those isolated discrete supercells within North Texas start to turn severe, and those will also possibly be tornadic as well, especially with the initial onset of tornadic activity in some very large hail producers across North Texas. And then it kind of transfers into more of a heavier rain threat as we get deeper into the day. So it all depends on where that front kind of stalls out. If you're north on the front on Wednesday, you're going to be getting more of the heavier rain threat. If you're south of the front, you're likely going to be getting the larger hail and the tornadic risk. as we go into that Wednesday time frame, but it also has that slight risk extending into North Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, back into Arkansas again with that 1 to 3 bullseye even on Wednesday. And there's your higher amounts as you head into northeast Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, western areas of Arkansas, southern portions of Missouri will likely start to get that 2, 4, possibly isolated 6-inch amounts as we head into that Wednesday. So you can definitely see there's a lot of action, a lot of heavy rain, but there is no capping inversion that's going to be limiting any activity on Wednesday. So as that activity shifts further southbound, not going to be, not going to be inhibited by any type of stronger capping inversion, because there basically isn't a cap. So anything that does form will likely turn severe very quickly in that atmosphere, and they even have their own elevated higher tornado parameters as we get into that initial onset on Wednesday morning. And I think there's going to be likely a second phase into the early evening time frame before most of it moves out after midnight on Wednesday. And there is your setup on Wednesday. Pretty high activity across Oklahoma and Texas, and then lighter amounts as you head towards the Kentucky region. But all that shifts eastbound, so you get kind of a drying spell across the Central Plains on Thursday. Everything kind of shifts across the Ohio Valley on Thursday. Not expecting terribly too much severe on Thursday, but as we head into Friday, it could reload again with its own system. I mean, we're heading into late April, going into May. This is your wettest time of the year. So you have these multiple disturbances, and a lot of times what happens is one disturbance impacts what's the next disturbance is going to be. And so even into Friday, I mean, we've got 4 disturbances that we're going to be dealing with before we even get to Friday. So that gives you, there's a lot of little moving parts in the atmosphere. But as of right now, it looks to be afternoon, evening time frame with another system, because another cool front that'll be sagging southbound. That's going to add to that moisture supply, add the overturning type aspect for this atmosphere, and likely going to be start to see more showers and thunderstorms on the strong to severe side across even into the southern plains going on Friday, and that will likely extend into your Saturday time frame. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.